for joining us today here at Cornerstone Church. We are a church that loves God and loves others. If you have any questions or would like to find out more, check us out online at bethaltochurch.com. We'd also love to connect with you in person. Cornerstone Church meets every Sunday morning at 10:10 in Bethalto, Illinois. We look forward to seeing you. And now, onto the message.
Headed for the Royal Family Kids Camp, headed for a lot of fun. It's great just knowing I'm a part of God's family, playing under the sun. Swimming and splashing and having a good time, round the Grandpa PMA and devotions. It's a great time for the good news that God loves me. Headed for the Royal Family Kids Camp, headed for a lot of fun. It's great just knowing I'm a part of God's family, playing under the sun. Swimming and splashing and having a good time, Grandpa PMA and devotion. It's a great time for the good news that God loves me.
For those of you who are newer to our church, maybe you're a guest for the first time here, this is our third year putting on a camp that we call Royal Family Kids Camp, and it is a camp for foster care kids all in our area. I just heard a story this morning about two of the girls that came to camp who attend school with one of the workers that was at camp with her son. And so we're not talking about kids that are just kind of random kids not from our area. We're talking about kids that very high probability that your kids are sitting with in school. There is a great need. I just heard recently, is it 520 foster care kids in Madison County alone, okay? We had 37 kids. We'd love to hit that. I don't know if we're going to be able to because it's so many. So the need is so great. I'd love to hit the 10% mark and have 10% of the foster care kids. But we had a full camp this year, 37 kids that we got to treat like royalty this week. And it is such a moving, powerful week. What we're going to do in just a moment is we're going to give you an opportunity to hear some stories from some of the workers at camp this week. But I want to do two things really quick. If you are one of our workers and you were at camp this past week, and even if you don't have a blue shirt, you're supposed to have your blue shirt on, would you stand for me? I just want everybody to see how many people, and this is not everybody. Now you can go ahead and sit down. Now I want to do something I should have done last week because this whole front area was filled with people who were going to be going to camp. But if you have contributed in any way to camp, maybe you helped out, maybe you didn't go to camp but you helped at registration, or you gave to Royal Family, or you helped in one of the planning things for that, I would like to ask, now blue shirt people stay down because we already clapped for you. So if that's you, I want you to go ahead and stand as well. So, yeah. All right. Awesome. We've not had you, yeah, you can sit down. Thank you so much. And the reason I say that is, and I'm not going to make everybody stand again, but if we did, a sizable number of people in our congregation have been a part of this. And I just think that that's really important for everybody here to understand and recognize. You may not be able to make it a whole week at camp. And that's fine. You don't have to. But you can give, you can pray. Some of you can show up in the evening to do a birthday party. Some of these kids, last year when we got back from camp, we told this story. There was a girl, and it was her birthday on Friday. And we said, happy birthday as she was leaving, and the wonderful, wonderful people that were her foster parents didn't even know that it was her birthday. Some of these kids, we had one child this week say to Don Flack, his counselor, he said, come on, hurry up. Don was saying, come on, let's hurry up, we're going to miss out. And he just looked at Don, and he goes, Mr. Don, I miss out on a lot of things. This is the reality of these kids. And so if we can do a birthday party for them, I mean, we give them a present, They're like, this is the most amazing thing ever. So you can be a part of planning and helping at a birthday party for a couple hours in an evening one night. And so I say this just to kind of get your mind thinking, and we're going to hear about all different kinds of stories of different things that happened this week. So what we're going to do, if otherwise I'm just going to keep rambling up here because I got all sorts of stories I can tell. I want you to hear from some of our workers. So first up, we have Larry Ehlers. Larry, where are you at? Come on, buddy. Larry's going to share. This is Larry. This is your first year, right, Larry?
Yes, this is my first year
First
getting to
year,
go.
and he was a support staff helper. So tell us about your experience at Royal Family.
First off, I want to say thank you to everybody that's out there, because without your donations and your gifts and support prayers, we wouldn't be able to do this.
Yeah.
It's hard, it's tough, but I would not change it for the world. And if they asked me to go next week again, I would be right there right now. Just because you feel the love. All these kids want is somebody to love them and care for them and tell them that they are loved and that they are precious. So on Wednesday night, we have a talent show. And we got to the talent show in the auditorium, and this young man is sobbing. I was like, what's wrong, dude? He's like, Mr. Larry, he said, the stairs are too wide. My slinky's not going to walk down the stairs. And I reminded him, I said, look, what happened Tuesday night when it was pouring down rain outside and we was in the cafeteria? I said, we used 2 napkin holders, a chair that wouldn't fit underneath the table. We used Matt Keller's hand. He said, yeah. And he goes, I used 2 candy lane boxes and another box. He goes, and we got it to go like 10 times down. And his face lit up. So I looked around the room. I said, there's a couple pieces of wood over there. We can use that. He goes, okay. So, his facial expression started to change. And when it was his turn, I got up there, grabbed the wood, and I started clapping them together. And it just illuminated him. It was great. And so he got it to go down the stair once, and then we put the piece of wood down, and he got that to walk 3 times, and then we put the other piece of wood, and he got it to walk 4 times, and he goes, we need something different. So I'm looking around the room. I see a flashlight. Well, the flashlight has a great big circle on the top. It's rectangle with rounded edges, and it has a handle. Well, this thing is not going to set right. He's like, Mr. Larry, are you sure? I was like, you can do this, dude. Boom. It took him 3 tries, but as soon as he got it to go off that flashlight, it was lights out. He was ecstatic, and everybody roared, and he had a great time. And that's what it's all about. So if you have any tug on your heart, any at all, that means God's calling you, and he needs you there too. Just because, just like me last year, he pulled on me. He said, it's your turn. Let's go.
It's excellent. Who would have thought that slinky skills would have been important at camp? But it's those kinds of little things that really make a profound difference. I thought Larry was going to share this. He didn't, but it's that same young man, I believe, that at night when they're trying to get the kids to go to bed, you were praying for him. And one of the nights, that child prayed for Larry as Larry was praying for him. So the change that took place in this kid's life, all of a sudden there was concern back for Larry. And Larry wasn't looking for the child to pray for him, but that's exactly what happened. All right, next up, we have Michaela. Michaela was one of our counselors. First time at camp.
This was my first year volunteering at Royal Family Kids Camp, and I was very skeptical when I got there Sunday because I had a few people come up to me and they said, oh, your girl's such a handful. And I only had one camper because I thought she was going to be such a handful. And last year she had probably like 10 meltdowns a day, they said. And this year she only had 2. And it just showed that first year that she came, they planted that seed in her. And then over like the time that she was there, it just got watered more. And when she came to camp, she was just sad. Like, she loved playing with dolls, but she would just take the doll and like go to the other side of the room and she would just play by herself. She wasn't sociable. She didn't try making friends. And she had a drawing and she drew me a picture. I don't know if they have it. Yeah. And there's a happy face, and that's me. And then she's behind me, and it just looks really scary, and it doesn't look happy. But by the end of the week, all of her drawings were happy, and she just seemed like a much happier person. And starting Wednesday, she would play Barbies with everybody, and Friday they were able to get up on stage and talk about their counselors, and she said, when I got to camp, I didn't think that I was going to be loved, but Miss Michaela showed me that she loved me so much, and I didn't have any friends here at camp, but Miss Michaela became my only friend. And it just shows that if you love them, then they'll see the love of Jesus through you.
Jeremy's already coming, so that's all the introduction you're going to get.
I figured you wanted to keep it moving. So hi, so I'm Jeremy, for those of you who may not know, and I had the opportunity to go this year as a full-time nurse. So this is actually my second year. Last year I was support staff. I actually helped another nurse who was a full-time nurse, and then did some other things in addition to that. So I got to kind of see the kids from, over the course of last year to this year. But what was really cool about this year is in the role of the nurse, I kind of thought like, oh, I'm just the nurse, right? Like, I'm just the nurse, I'm just the med passer. And what I started to notice was that from the beginning of the week to the end of the week, I got to see the whole thing. And so, not to paint like this huge, dark, dreary picture, but like when the kids were dropped off, I mean, I don't picture, like people like all depressed, like I don't want to go to camp, like that kind of stuff, but they were quiet. They kind of went through the line like, oh, this is something else I'm being shoved through. And they came up and, they would stop and see me and get weighed or drop off their medications. And just kind of quiet, even on the way up there, they get a little rambunctious as they kind of meet their friends. But, it really wasn't kind of that high spirited. And what was really cool is over the course of the week, what I actually saw was throughout all the kids is I got to sit down and ask all these different kids, like, what was your favorite part? Like, how did things go? And so once we did the talent show, Larry talked about almost every kid I asked, I said, what was your favorite part? And they said, the talent show, because it was so awesome hearing everyone cheer for me and telling me what a good job I did and encouraging me. And I'm just like, man, like that meant that much to these kids. And then what was really cool is then about 2 days later, we go home on Friday morning and we're getting ready to leave. And I have this one kid that I've seen quite a bit throughout the camp. And he says to me, are you coming back next year? And I said, well, I'm going to do what I can to come back. And he says, I want you to promise me to come back next year. And so it just goes to show me as we come home and then I go to check these kids out, what does checkout look like? Registrations, kind of like, all right, let's go through the line. And we check out, and what do they say? They're jumping for joy. They are literally jumping for joy and smiling and laughing and having a good time and picking up all their gifts and everything that we get. And so I could see that transformation in 1 week's time because of what everybody did, from the camp nurse to the counselors that were with them to the support staff, the people that sent up the presents and did the birthday party and came up for the talent show. All of that made such an impact that these kids in 1 week changed so much. We got to give that little light of hope to them for 1 week that I think is going to last. And like Michaela said, plant a seed. So
it's excellent. Thanks. The nurse is an important job, obviously, with medication, but also all of the little boo-boos that happen along the way. So we went through plenty of Band-Aids. And Jeremy did a great job. Thank you. I want to invite next Jena Hasty to come on up and share. Jena has been involved every year, right? In a variety of different ways. And this year she was a counselor.
Yes, and I wrote mine down, so sorry.
Okay.
I had a time limit. This was the only way I was going to stay. So this was my...
Okay, I'm going to interrupt because everybody's like, you want to keep things moving and you want a time limit. I did. I tried to get them to be succinct, and so I just, it's because I care.
Yes.
And I want everybody to just stay on the rails. All right, there we go. I'm not an ogre, all right?
No. So this was my third year in being involved in the camp, but my first year as a counselor. And every year before camp, Darla has come to me and said, so what do you want to do this year? And every year my response is the same thing. I'll do whatever you want me to do. And I have to tell you, this year I was a little bit more fearful as I said that because I knew she was short on counselors. And so I just kind of had this funny feeling. So year one, I was actually only able to commit part-time. And so I didn't really have any direct contact with the kids. Most of what I did was just support Darla and the team behind the scenes. And basically that was helping with the birthday party. Whenever the woodworking projects were an unexpected hit, I went around and collected up some donations of wood and took those out to the camp. And I brought fruit and vegetables and some notes midweek just to, try to boost the staff spirits. Year 2, I was able to go as full-time staff. And so I worked as a photographer, helping put together the memory books that the kids take home at the end of the week. And I ran errands. One day I went to the store and bought a pair of shoes for one of our campers. At night, I would sit in the dorm for a couple hours with the kids while they fell asleep, so their counselors could have a break. And then this year, my experiences as a counselor were definitely different. And I think we actually have pictures to go along with some of my experiences. So, so this picture is actually right before the tea party. And my camper decided that I needed to have a new hairdo, which consisted of a very severe part, like on the very side of my head, and a very Donald Trump-esque comb over that was held in place, I'm not lying, by no less than a half can of aerosol hairspray, like this close to my head. And then there's the next picture. I haven't seen these yet. So this is the talent show. Neither one of my campers wanted to be involved at all in the talent show. And the only way that we could get them to participate, Miss Sally and I agreed to let the girls feed us watermelon and pudding and pie from behind us. So it just goes to show anything can be a talent at camp. And is there one more? Oh, that's it. Okay. And then another one of my my early experiences of the week, I actually was sent down the human torpedo launcher, which is also known as the water slide, which is fueled by dish soap and a great big shove from Aunt Kristen, wherever she is. So in 3 years, I've actually done a huge variety of things. And so just very quickly, I felt like I feel like I'm sort of an expert after having 3 years. So I wanted to just kind of tell you some of the skills. If you're thinking about joining us next year for RFK, here's some things that you may want to consider. One, can you be persuaded by an 11-year-old to go down a water slide, to hold a frog, or to have a face full of pudding and watermelon? Are you able to hold your breath for 1 minute and 32 seconds? Because that is approximately how long it takes to empty 1/2 can of hairspray. Do you have the ability to eat a corn dog and something that is called a corn nugget in the same meal? Can you give a counselor a break and remind them that they are making a difference even when they don't see it? Can you pick out a pair of shoes for a little boy? Whose only pair is 2 sizes too small? And can you write a note to a little girl and tell her that she's beautiful and that she is capable of doing amazing things? I guarantee you, no matter your age, your physical ability, your skill set, there is something that you can do at camp. And I hope that you will all consider it next year.
Thank you, Jena. I have to remind myself who's next. Matt Schneider is going to share next with us. Appreciate Matt. Matt's been helping us out for the last couple of years. This is his third year. And yeah, welcome, Matt. It looks like you wrote yours down, too.
Yeah, I was told by an ogre to not take too much time. Not necessarily you. I didn't say you. It was totally you. My name is Matt. I'm a third year, I'm going to say participant, because participants get ribbons. Darla, ribbon. For RFK. And most of what I was going to say, Jena just said, so I hate you, Jena. I've got a sweet tattoo, and it's pretty awesome. So I wrote this down so I wouldn't mention my tattoo, and Jena took half of it, so I mentioned my tattoo. There you go. So I was 3 years of doing this.
I don't think they can see the smiley face
it's
tattoo.
a smiley face tattoo.
It's a
My kiddo was
tattoo.
feeling down because his camp girlfriend liked someone else after 10 minutes. So I was like, what if your counselor got a tattoo? He goes, I think we can handle that. So I just made a request that it was not going to be the poop emoji. I was afraid it wouldn't wash off for today, and you guys wouldn't think I was particularly spiritual. So a few things that I couldn't want to get to. I was really afraid to be a counselor. Really afraid to be a counselor because I was afraid to be vulnerable. It's really easy, whether or not you guys believe so or not, to stand up behind a guitar and worship with you guys because it's not for you. It's for Jesus. It's really easy to stand behind a lectern sometimes and just talk about Jesus' love because, you know, it's not necessarily vulnerable all the time. And I was really afraid to be a counselor because it makes you be vulnerable. And I'll tell you a quick story real quick. I was standing in the bathroom line, and not to go, but just you have to watch the kids in the area to make sure that they're behaving and everything's going okay. And a kid kept flicking on and off the lights in the shower and scaring the other kids in the shower. And I said, buddy, what if someone did that to you? And he's like, I wouldn't care. And this kid was 9 years old, but like this tall. And he just had that tude that said, I don't care what you say. And it was okay, because I got a kid, and I'm bigger than you, and I'll put you in a trash can. And the little kid goes, well, I wouldn't care at all. And I said, okay, well, what if someone did something to you that you didn't like? You know, what? And he goes, Mr. Matt S., that's a lot of what ifs. And it's at that moment I realized that I'm not good enough to be a counselor, because then I started flicking the lights on and off on him when he was in the shower. I was not prepared for that. I had some evil in me that Jesus had to work out that night at break time. I did not get any encouragement from the staff. They thought it was hilarious. So, if you're a sinner, you can help. So, all that to say this, okay? Here at Cornerstone, we're about loving God and loving others. And if you're too afraid to be vulnerable with others, you're not really going to love them. And if you don't love others, I don't know that you love God. And it's hard. It's really, really hard. Okay? And sometimes it looks like I did with athletic shorts, a fanny pack, and a hat with a flying cheeseburger on it, which is what my kids wore. And sometimes it looks silly, and it's taking care of kids, and sometimes it's helping in a widow's ministry and talking to widows. And sometimes it's getting to know the person 5 seats down from you that you really don't know. If we're going to be the body of Christ and we're really going to be the church, it's time to get vulnerable. It's time to get a little bit dirty. It's time to get involved in each other's lives, maybe more than we have. It may not be at this camp. God bless you guys for sending us to this camp, doing this camp. I'm a big believer. We donate, we give, we go, we do, but we don't do it for us. And believe it or not, we don't do it for the kids. We do it for the glory of God being preached to the nations. And in this case, the nation was these kids. It's the glory of God. And it's the glory of God that we're going to find ourselves aching for vulnerability. If you can't share your joy and you can't share your pain with each other, we're missing the point. And it's at a place like this, at a camp like this, that we could go and we could dig deep and get really vulnerable with a bunch of kids who needed it at that moment and let them know that it's okay. It's okay to not be okay all the time. It's okay to not have it all together all the time. It's okay to make mistakes. And it's all about how you respond. And it's all about knowing that God has a plan, even in the moments when it just doesn't feel like it. So I guess what I'm trying to say is maybe it's time for you to get a little bit more vulnerable, get a little more involved in whatever it may be, whatever ministry God will call you to. It's not good enough to just sit here on a Sunday and not dig in.
Thanks, Matt. Appreciate that. And you can come on up. Appreciate that. I did not know where Matt was going to go. I got a little scared there at the beginning. She took your stuff. It's all right.
All right, this is my second year as counselor. This year I did not get my same two girls. This year I was part of the older girls' dorm. I had two 11-year-old girls, super sweet, got along great. They made my job pretty easy. One of my campers came for the week and she had everything she needed and then some. My other camper did not have enough clothes to make it through the week. The clothes she did have were 2 sizes too big, or they were 2 sizes too small. She'd put on her socks and you'd see all her little toes sticking out. Her shoes were deplorable, literally falling apart. Kevin laundered all of her clothes. Amanda ran and bought her new shoes. I promised I wasn't going to cry. Angela gave her the very shampoo and conditioner that she had brought for herself for that week. And I gave her most of my socks. It literally took a village to provide for this little girl this week. On Sunday, before all the kids get there, the counselors and staff decorate the dorms for all of their kids. They pick different themes. We put up posters, streamers, and we just make it a very welcoming place for them when they come. On Wednesday, my 2 girls realized that Miss Cindy and Miss Karen's bunk was not decorated. And Miss Cindy and Karen explained it was their first year and they didn't know they were supposed to bring decorations. So my girls immediately went back to their bunk, started ripping down streamers and posters and decorations that I had put up for them. And they started taking that and decorating Miss Cindy and Miss Karen's bunk. They soon got Jena's girls involved, and Jena had written a bunch of inspirational notes for her girls saying, "You are beautiful, you are loved, you are worthy, you are special," and hung those for her girls. And our 4 girls wrote those same type of notes and put them in Miss Cindy and Miss Karen's bunks, letting them know they were special and they were loved. My camper, who came so ill-prepared for camp, took gifts that I had given her and things she had made and put them on Miss Cindy and Miss Karen's bed because they did not have anything and they did not want them to feel left out. Thursday evening is our carnival, and we have bounce houses and games, and it's lining the woods. So you are covered in bug spray, sweat, there are smells, and that's on the children and the counselors and the staffers. And in the evening, when all that commotion is done, we go back to the dorm, and the women, counselors, and staff give all of these girls pedicures. We soak their feet in water, we use sugar scrub, we massage their feet and legs with lotion, we paint their their toenails, and that's experiences most of them have never had before. And this year when we were doing that, several of the girls decided that they wanted to do the same to us. So as soon as we were done cleaning their feet, several of us staff and counselors would sit in the chairs with these girls at our feet, cleaning our sweaty, dirty feet. And that was probably the most humbling experience I've ever had. So I just want everybody to know that all the songs, all the dramas, all the Bible stories, all the object lessons, all the things we do that you don't think they're listening, they are. And all the ways that we show love for them by letting them get in front of us in the lunch line or saying a kind word, they are noticing everything we do. And we got to see that living through these girls this week.
Thank you, Ann. In James chapter 1, verse 27, I'm just kind of like our theme verse when we get to camp and we start talking about royal family. It says, religion that God our Father accepts as pure and faultless as this, to look after orphans and widows in their distress, to keep oneself from being polluted by the world. Sometimes I think in the church we focus or we have an imbalance on this verse sometimes. There are times where, and look, keeping ourselves from being polluted by this world, living holy lives, that's very, very important. That's a major part of this verse here. But when you read through the scriptures, and I would encourage you to do it this way, I would encourage you to, next time you open up your Bible, I want you to just keep in the back of your mind the command to care for the orphan, to care for the widow, to care for those people who cannot help themselves. It is a theme that is on repeat over and over and over all throughout the scriptures. I grew up in church. I was the kid that, I was in literally the front row, but I was in the front row all the time. I remember going to church one time when I was sick, okay? That's how much how much of a value it was in our home. And I grew up, and in junior high, I started reading through the scriptures, I started spending time. And I remember hearing someone once speak about caring for those that are downtrodden, those are the orphan and the widow and those things. And I remember it just kind of stuck in my mind. And I remember then from that point on, as I read through the scriptures, I can't get away from it. It shows up all over the place. When we talk about camp, we talk about what we're doing here. Now, why do we do this? Matt, I know Jena took some of your stuff. You took a little of my thunder, so, that's how that works, I guess. But why do we do what we do? If you talk to any of these people in a blue shirt today, and I haven't, but you can ask them, and I think every one of these people in these t-shirts will tell you that not only was it difficult and hot and sweaty, and there was a lot of frustration even maybe along the way, I think everyone will tell you that they loved it or they received something from it. And that some of them are like, yeah, I'm going back next year. Do we do this camp because it makes us feel good? Do you know what I mean? Like, do I do this because I know at the end of the week I'm going to have this sense of fulfillment because of what I was able to accomplish? Do we do this camp because we want to be able to, parade it around on a Sunday morning and say, look at these great things that we did. Look, we cared for these poor kids right here. These kids, they got troubles. Is that why we do this? No, it's not. Is it one of those things where we do this because, in the great big scheme of things, these kids have had some wrong done to them, and so we just feel like we need to go make it right and do some right for them? It's not even just that. All of those things are true, though, right? We do get something good out of this. There is a sense of fulfillment and a deep sense of how we serve these kids, and then they end up serving us, and we leave probably more full, I think, in many ways than these kids do. We do this, and yes, it is a great display of the gospel at work. And we do this, yes, and it is creating a right for a child who has all these wrong. But we ultimately do this because this is religion that is pure and faultless. This is what the gospel comes down to when it comes down to when the rubber meets the road. It's how we change our lives to be able to impact the people that are around us. Religion isn't just this kind of floaty thing out here, or it shouldn't be. The gospel isn't just this, well, God loves me and I go to church and I kind of have this thing. No, the gospel impacts us so profoundly that we then are compelled to go out and to love. It's like I can't contain this anymore. I can't help but go and serve and love these kids, because when it comes to being poor and down and out, when it comes to my relationship with God, that's who I am or was as a sinner. But because of Christ's work on the cross, I was shown love and I was brought into the family. And for a week, we took 37 kids and we showed them love and we welcomed them into our, as we call it, RFK family. And we do that partly because we try to minimize the dating, and we're like, you don't date your family members, and we're all RFK. I said that to one kid, and he looked at me for a second. I think it was the same kid might have been the same kid. Was that yeah, anyway, I think that was the same kid. And he looked at me for a second, and he goes, we're all family, huh? He goes, I'm not related to her. I'm not related to her. I'm not related to him. I'm not related to him. I'm not related to you. So there. And he wanted to date this girl. So anyway, I was like, whatever. And then all the kids are like, ooh, we got you. Whatever. I didn't say much. I just went back to eating my my corn dog and my corn nugget, as Jena said. You know, I want to transition our service here, but I want to do one thing really quick. I want to hop over to Colossians. We've been going through Colossians, and I'm going to take a second here to talk about a couple things from our next passage in Colossians. This is going to be very brief, but I think it's important. Go ahead and go to that first verse, if you would, Jim. Colossians, there's a big transition here in the theme, so I'm not going to get into all the particulars, but last week we talked about family. We talked about how Paul looked out at his culture, and he recognized that there were some broken things in his culture with the relationships between husbands and wives and parents and kids. And what he does is he kind of injects the gospel into it, and he says, you know, husbands, I know the culture says you can just rule and do whatever you want, but you need to love your wives. And he says this is not just what the culture is doing isn't necessarily right. And we're going to talk about this in a couple of weeks about slavery. Slavery was a real part of their culture and their world. But I want to get to the idea of motivation again, because why do we do what we do? Paul talks to these slaves that were in the culture of his day at this church. These are presumably, think about this, these are slaves that are in the church. Paul's writing this letter to a church. So you have these families in the church, and you have their slaves that are also in the church. So how does Paul address this and deal with this? He talks about motivation. He says, slaves, obey your earthly masters. Obey your earthly masters in everything. And do it not only when their eye is on you and to curry their favor, but with sincerity of heart and reverence for the Lord. I appreciate what Matt said, because as much as today is about Royal Family Kids Camp, it's really about all of us doing the work of the gospel in whatever capacity the Lord has called us to do. And so for you, it might be going and serving widows. It might be, as a few weeks ago, we built a ramp for someone who's coming home after being in the hospital and in long-term care. It might be that you serve out in our foyer, you welcome people in the parking lot. It might be in a variety of different ways. But if you're going to do these things, if you're going to do the work of the gospel, if whatever we put our hands to, we need to make sure that we're not doing it for the wrong motivations, so that others can see, so that we can curry their favor, so that we can be applauded by other humans. But instead, we do this with sincerity of heart and reverence for the Lord. Verse 23, he says, whatever you do, work at it with all your heart, as working for the Lord, not for human masters, since you know that you will receive an inheritance from the Lord as a reward. It is the Lord Christ you are serving. We do what we do at camp because we're serving Christ. And we do it with all of our heart, we do it with all of our strength, and we do it for the Lord. And so I just want to encourage us today to take a moment to think about motivation. Why do you give? Why do you serve? And this is for those of you who went to Royal Family Kids Camp. Are your motivations correct? Man, you had a great feeling of accomplishment at the end of the week. But don't you dare come next year if that's what's driving you to come back. If you like the applause from family members, oh, I can't believe you're such a nice person for giving a week of camp. If that's your motivation for coming to camp, you can stay home next year. Your motivation needs to be following the work of the Master who says, I loved you, now you go love. I cared for you when you were my enemy, now you go love. That's the motivation. And for anybody else here, like, wow, I think your motivation needs to be the same. In whatever ministry, whatever work it is that you find yourselves doing. Motivation. It's a deep question for us today to consider. Why are we doing what we do? Why are we coming here today? Are we really doing it, as Matt said, to give glory and adoration and praise to God? Or are we doing it to get a little star for ourselves? Or are we doing it for some accolades for somebody else? Are we doing it because we want an emotional experience out of it? Oh, I really love this song. I'm going to really worship on this one. Church, our motivations need to reflect the Master and his love for us. And so let's be the same kind of people that do that.
It's our honor to play a small role in what God is doing in and through your life. and we would love to continue that journey with you. To find out what your next steps could be in your relationship with Christ, check out bethaltochurch.com/next. Thanks for joining us again, and we'll see you next time.